Well, I do love this new car. There were a few things with the current setup that I wanted to change. One of them was that with the new tires, they stuck out so far that whenever the suspension would travel up, they would rub the fender. So I wanted to raise the front ride height a little bit and also add a little bit stiffer spring. And one thing that I missed that I had on the old car was a set of adjustable dampers. One way that I can solve all three of those problems were by getting a set of adjustable coilovers, which is what I did. I ended up going with a set of Petters adjustable coilovers. The kit that I went with had a coilover system for the front that was adjustable for both preload and ride height, and also had a top plate that would allow me to adjust the camber. The rear setup was a separated spring mount, and shock design. Because of the extra camber adjustment that these plates were allowing, I had to trim the top of my strut tower. So I had to take this hole that was probably 1 7/8 in diameter and open it up to 2 5/8 was the size that I ended up going with. This allowed me to get about 3 degrees of camber for each wheel, and I could have gone way more, but since I drive this car on the street to each race, I didn't want to go with too much. Here's the course map for the day. As you can probably see, there's not too many elements in there to make it complicated, and it is rather short. To make this course a little bit easier to explain, I split it up into 5 different sections. The first section includes the starting line, immediately followed by a sharp right turn, and then the timing start. Then you have a left-hand turn and then a right-hand turn. Both of those you have to maneuver while accelerating, or you should at least. And then there's one more gate to go through, and then you enter the big sweeper, which is where I started section 2. So section 2 is a big right-hand sweeper. Section 3, I'm sure that there is an official term for this element, but I'm not sure what that is, so I'm just going to call it the box, where it's 2, or at least it looks like 2 sharp left-hand turns. And then after you exit those turns, after you exit the box, you go through a very narrow gate and then enter section 4, which is the same sweeper as section 2, just it's a left-handed turn. And then section 5 is a big slalom with a finish line at the end. Like I mentioned earlier in this video, I don't think there were too many elements to this course. I'm not saying it's a bad design by any means. There were just 2 different areas that I think were really going to make or break drivers' times. I thought that section 1 would be challenging because the drivers would have to accelerate through a lot of these turns. The higher horsepower cars might struggle with this section when it comes to putting the power down exiting a turn. I know that when I got my new car, that was one thing that I struggled to figure out, was how much throttle I can give outside of a turn without spinning out. But on the other hand, the lower horsepower cars would be able to stay flat-footed through a majority of this section. However, they might not have the power to just accelerate out of the turn like us higher horsepower cars would. And then the other section that I thought could be difficult would be section 3. The way that the box is designed, it initially looks like you have to have 2 sharp left-hand turns instead of just one big continuous turn, when I think that the latter is the better move for this element. As you can see that the back of the box is blown out, there's no wall of cones back there. So if a driver wanted to, they could take that turn extra wide and try to make that one big arc, which is typically faster. And that's the way that I was trying to do it. And I think there were some drivers that tried to do the 2 different inputs to make it around those 2 sharp turns, and that really slowed them down. And I'm not saying that the sweeper or the slalom are not important, that you can't mess them up, because you definitely can. However, I don't think that the very small differences from driver to driver on those elements make as big of an impact on your total time as maybe a little mistake in section 1 or 3 could cause. like all first runs, I went into this just planning on learning the course, warming up my tires, and just figuring out where I can and can't go fast. I ended up getting a 33.577, which, without me even knowing, was a pretty damn good time for the first run. These new shocks have adjustable dampers on them, so I'm able to set them between 0 clicks, which is the softest setting, to I think 32 is the highest setting, but that would be the most firm of a ride. I started the day off with both front and rear set to 20, and it felt good, but the front end just felt a little soft, or I guess the whole system felt a little soft, but the front end especially. So right before this run, I ended up setting the front to 27 and the rear to 25. And as for my game plan for this run, I wanted to be a little bit more aggressive. And what I mean by that is carrying a little more speed into turns and accelerating a little quicker out of turns.
2, 1, go!
So the shock change definitely worked. However, this run was a little squirrely. As you can see, exiting the box in section 3, I lost it a little bit, but not that bad. So the time ended up being a 32.95. Not bad at all. So this run, I pretty much had the same game plan as the last one. Be aggressive, but not dumb. So I took it a little bit easier in some spots than the last run, and thought I pushed harder in others, but apparently I did not, because this run was a 32.52, so just a little bit slower than my last run. But still, not a bad way to enter the midpoint of the day. This is my first run back from the midday lunch break, so that meant that my tires were now cold and I had probably forgotten a little bit of the track, so I took this one a little easy, but left the car settings about the same. As you can see, I had a passenger with me.
Ready, go!
This wasn't a very fast run, but because I anticipated the tires to be cold, I chose to take it rather smooth and kind of relearn the course. And it ended up being a 32.63, so a little bit slower than my last run, but with the cold tires, that's not too bad. I'll take it. That and my passenger had a pretty funny reaction.
That's pretty fun.
Hellacious fun.
There were a couple of things that I wanted to try on this next run. To start off with, I wanted to set the shocks a little bit more stiff just to see if that did anything. So I set them at 30 in the front and 27 in the back, so just barely different. The second thing is that I wanted to try starting in second gear instead of starting in first gear. As you've seen on all my other runs, I've just ran first gear out for the first 10 or 15 feet and then shifted into second while I was making that turn. Just since I didn't have to accelerate anyway, that's what I had been doing. But because the car is geared so low, I thought, well, I might as well try starting in second.
Nope.
Looking back on the video, I think that I actually did accelerate a little bit quicker through section 1 because I started in second gear. However, in person it did not feel like it at all, and you could actually hear me say, nope, that's not it, as soon as we started. Other than that, it was a pretty good run. Even though it did feel just a little bit too stiff, this ended up being my fastest run of the day up to this point, so I can't complain at all. Also, I did have a passenger with me, and yes, he did have a pretty funny reaction.
That sounds so cool.
Thank you.
I don't know if this was the right move or not, but I ended up switching my shocks back to the previous setting, so they were 27 in the front and 24 in the rear. Since it had started to warm up in the afternoon, and I had just done 2 fast runs, I wanted to cool my tires down a little bit, so right after that last run, I sprayed a little bit of water on them to cool them off. I don't know if that was needed, but it's just one of those things I thought I'd try. My game plan going into this run was to just drive a little bit more aggressive, just like before, accelerate out of turns a little earlier, carry more speed through turns, and just kind of do whatever I can to get a better time. The tires seem to have a lot of grip, but my driving style on this run was just a little bit too aggressive. I ended up sliding a little bit more than I would have liked to, and it just was not as smooth as I was hoping. In fact, I did end up hitting 2 cones, which added a total of 4 seconds to my time, so essentially this run was thrown away. One thing that was kind of funny on this run was my keychain was actually hitting my knee. So I typically keep my keychain tucked between the dash and the steering column so it does not hit my knee. But on this run, for some reason, it fell out and started like tickling my knee. And I don't know, I didn't think that it would have caused that big of an issue, but for some reason my mind could not stop thinking about how annoying it was that keychain was hitting my knee. And that may have been why I slid around just a little too much and hit a couple cones. When preparing the car for this last run, I wanted to keep the settings the same as I had before. As for game plan, I wanted to attack the box a little bit different than I have. You heard me say earlier in this video how I wanted to treat that box as more of one continuous curve instead of 2 sharp left-hand turns. The blue line that you see on the screen is kind of the line that I was taking. Those 2 left-handed turns were just a little too sharp, and I felt like I could have changed it into more of a continuous curve. So this green line that you're seeing is an exaggeration, but it's more of the line that I wanted to take. This meant that I would have had to sacrifice a little bit of time entering the box, but going through it I should be able to carry just a little bit more speed and definitely have more speed exiting it. Other than that one section, there wasn't any specific goals I had in mind other than just drive fast. have it, my fastest run of the day with a 32.011. So that was a pretty good run. I think that I executed the box a little bit better this time. However, there were a few sections where I could have done better. The first section I think I messed up was entering the sweeper, so where it goes from section 1 to section 2. I think that the line I took was okay, but I just entered with not as much speed as I should have. Watching back in the video, you can see me kind of enter the sweeper and then accelerate halfway through it, and I think that I could have pushed the car a little bit harder there. The next section, and the one that really bothers me, is exiting section 4, so exiting the sweeper and getting ready to start the slalom. So as you can see on this chart here, the green line is what I was trying to do most of the day, and I did for most of my runs, but I didn't really focus on it until I noticed it on this run. But the idea is that you should go on the sweeper and then in one smooth motion be able to make it through that gate right before the slalom starts. But as you can see on this chart where there's the blue line is what I took. So I exited the sweeper just a little bit early and had to correct to make it through that gate. So when you're telling the car to go left and then all of a sudden you give it a sharp right turn or a little bit less left and then back, that can upset the car, and even though it may seem like a very small mistake here, I think that is the reason that I did not get a 21-second time like my goal was today. And then after that, I was frustrated with myself after messing up that one section. I wasn't super focused about the slalom. I don't think I did a bad job at the slalom, but there were a couple of spots where I kind of fell behind and could have been a little bit quicker there and possibly made up for my mistake earlier, but that's just the way she goes. So for the final results of the day, I ended up getting second in my class. The person who beat me is in this red Camaro here. Historically, he has been insanely fast, so him beating me was not a surprise. However, he only beat me by 0.667 seconds this time, so that is a lot closer than I've ever been to him. Overall, I'd say it was a very good day. The final season points have not been released yet. However, I'm pretty sure that I locked in second place for my class, with first place going to that red Camaro. With it getting late in the year, the weather in Northeast Ohio is about to change and get pretty cold. As of now, I only have one more scheduled race in Akron. If the weather is nice, then I'll go and hopefully have a good time and end my season on a good note. As always, thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time.